Hey, here we are. Two of this year's most intriguing females in films were Dorothy Michael in Tootsie and Roberta Muldoon in The World According to Garp. And Roberta was played by John Lithgow. And if you saw The World According to Garp, you cannot help but have him as probably, I don't know, as my favorite character. And here you are playing a woman through this whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this
That's
evening,
right.
and I don't know what they're going to do this year at the Academy Awards, because they really need to have, hopefully you'll get an Oscar nomination for it.
Well, it's the first I've heard of it, Bill.
No, everybody's talking about it. But, okay, so they've got to have the Best Actress Award for an actor portraying a woman or something. It's got to be real confusing.
Well, and it goes the other way around. Julie Andrews played a man this year.
Right.
I expect we'll be seeing a lot more of that.
Tootsie, and Dustin Hoffman is Tootsie, in Tootsie, put on the makeup for hours to become that part. What about, I got to give you my opinion. When I saw it, it looked to me like a guy decided to put on a wig and play a woman. And because you still carried off the guy's part. I mean, you play a guy being a woman as opposed to him. Did you have to go through a lot of makeup?
Well, there was a lot of, I went through quite a bit myself, but I think there's a big difference between what Dustin did in Tootsie and the part of Roberta Muldoon. I mean, Dustin, of course, it was an understanding between the audience and Dustin that he was a man dressed as a woman. I was playing a transsexual. A transsexual is a man who's surgically
But you still look like a
turned
big,
herself.
tough football player.
I mean,
look like
I think that the appearance of a transsexual is a woman who has retained a lot of masculine qualities. And that was certainly my intention. I also knew I was never going to fool anybody. For one thing, I'm 6'4", and I'm about that much taller than Robin Williams. So, and besides, a man dressed as a woman is like forced perspective. I looked even taller than I was, not to mention my high heels.
Oh, which your size what?
Oh, God, they were like boats. They were especially made. I had espadrilles and pumps, and, well, we won't go into that, but I was huge.
What about your family when they saw you? Did you tell them I'm playing a woman in this film?
I told them. My present wife was only my girlfriend back then. I mean, it's a measure of our love for each other.
I was going to
She's
say,
my
she
wife
still
now.
married you, even after going to the movie.
But she came and visited the set. She's a history professor. You know, she grew up on a farm in Montana. The entertainment business is still fairly new to Mary. She came to visit me a few years ago when I was in The Big Blonde. I wore a little false mustache, and that was more than she could bear. You can imagine what she went through when she visited the set of Garp.
Have you had a chance to see Tootsie?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I love Tootsie.
Yeah. What do you think of Dustin Hoffman as a woman?
Oh, well, as I say, I think Dustin Hoffman as a woman, it was the difference between him and a real woman that I think was the comedy of that film. There was always that tension. You always knew that he was a man in there, sort of receiving all these comical stimuli, you know. And I think it was a fantastic comedy performance. I mean, I think at root, the biggest difference between what he did and what I did is that my part was far from a comical role. I mean, the first impact that Roberta has is a comical one.
You get really involved with the character, Roberta's character. You suddenly do, I mean, as I said, you still know it's a guy, as a woman, but yet you suddenly become involved and forget that is somebody playing a transsexual. You become involved with her character as a lady that must be going through these problems. And I guess that's why you're getting all these awards. We have a clip from, we always have clips, I say that every night, but from The World According to Garp, John Lithgow's performance as Roberta Muldoon, and give you an idea of how he and Robin Williams worked together. This is an action clip, too. Was this right when you two guys first meet? Okay.
So she gives a pretty good introduction to herself here.
This is a truck going through the neighborhood of them. It is. All right.
No, this I think is another clip. This is their very first
I blew
meeting.
it.
That's okay.
This is the first meeting of Roberta and Garp. Here it is.
Robin is everybody watches every little move he makes for any any resemblance to Mork.
Well, that's what we had Glenn Close on the other night, who played his mother in the film,
Yeah.
and that was what we talked about, the fact that here he was actually sticking to a script for the first time.
Yeah.
What is it like for you as a performer that, okay, the first chance you ever had to be on Broadway, you were in a play for 3 weeks, you win a Tony. Okay, now here you are in this film, and am I right? You're going to New York this weekend to accept a
The New York Film Critics Award.
New York Films Critic Award. You're nominated for Golden Globe? Or
No,
just
no, not that. But I did get the L.A. Film Critics.
the L.A. Film Critic. You did get that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be. How do you deal with all these awards so fast when you just?
Well, it's dizzying and exciting. In the case of The Changing Room, when I won the Tony in New York, I'd never worked in New York at all, and I was continuing to do the show every night. In this case, it's, of course, a year and a half ago that I did Roberta. All my juices were flowing, so to speak, back then. Nowadays, it's just like wonderful attention. It's great to be recognized for your work, but you don't get to go out there in the evening and show it off again.
You'd rather be on stage?
Well, it's like playing two different kinds of sports, you know, acting and in the films and on stage. I love them both, but they're completely different processes connected to each other. But I like to switch back and forth, and I always intend to.
You acted with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I mean, that in itself's got to be a thrill for
technically,
most
I didn't act with them. I was on a Fulbright in England and going to drama school there at Lambda. And I stayed on in England and was like an apprentice to the RSC, more as an assistant director. Back in those days, I was trying to decide whether to be a director or an actor, going through a kind of schizophrenic period. And
So,
then
do you want to get back into directing or make that change?
I haven't directed in 5 or 6 years. Acting has sort of taken over, and it does take over. Acting is a full-time obsession almost. It's very hard to interrupt it, because very often you're on to the next role while you're still, when a movie is opening, you're already. When GARP opened, or when we wrapped shooting, between finishing the shooting and the time it opened, I'd done 2 plays in New York and a television movie, and had already started on a new film. Now you try to work directing into all of that.
Yeah, it's kind of tough.
Someday I will. Someday I'll return to it.
Stay with us for a little bit.
Sure.
You don't have another play or anything you got to go through right now. Okay, Sandy Kenyon, our entertainment correspondent, will be here when we come back. Thank you, John.
You bet.